Hi, Kate. Welcome to the Open Door Sisterhood podcast.
Thanks so much, Alex. It's a great pleasure to be here.
I am honored to be introducing you to our audience because you are a busy woman. So thank you for taking time to record with us and to talk about this topic of money and midlife. Both of those words have a lot of stress associated with them. And then when you combine them, it's like mega stressful, right?
Yes,
So we're going to be
yes,
talking
I
about all
agree.
of these stress points. But first, before we get into the meat of it, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience? Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do during the day,
Okay.
why you like doing that, and then a little bit about your family.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Kate Redden. I am a financial advisor and have been that for my entire career. So I just celebrated my 30-year college reunion over the weekend. So that reminded me how long I've been doing this. Came out of college with a finance degree. At the time, there weren't many options other than stockbroker, product sales, etc. Eventually was able to find my way towards financial planning, which is really, to me, the most valuable part of financial conversations. You know, anybody can invest, lots of different ways to invest out there, but really doing some planning and understanding your financial situation now, your goals, how you need to act now in order to reach your goals. That to me really became what I thought was most valuable for people. And so that was really where I focused my career and have been focusing on doing financial planning with my clients since the late 90s. I got my certified financial planner certification back in 2003. And that has become, in my opinion, the gold standard to make sure that financial planners are really staying up to date with all the latest regulations and what's going on in the industry, and just making sure that laws change, regulations change, and we have to stay up to date with that. I work for a firm called Merit Financial Advisors. It's a large investment advisory firm. I'm here in Denver and have a team that I work with here in Denver. You asked what I love about what I do. It really is the coaching side of things. I'm fascinated by numbers. I'm fascinated by investments, markets, etc. But that's not really what I love. It's using that knowledge and using those things to help people understand their own financial situation, understand their own goals, and help them reach those goals. And that's really the meat of financial planning. My family, so we've lived here in Denver for about 15 years. My husband and I moved here with our two boys when they were very young, and we moved here to start a new church. My husband is a pastor and has been for many years. So we started the church 15 years ago with a couple of other families, and I was able to continue doing what I love to do with my firm from Atlanta at the time. And so technology has certainly allowed that to be easier to do and work from anywhere in the country, but also to serve clients anywhere in the country. So that's been a good bonus. We have two boys. One is an 18-year-old senior in high school. So we are in the midst of college planning and figuring out how we're going to pay for that and getting him into the college that he wants to go to, and figuring out what his next step is. And then we also have a 15-year-old son who is a sophomore in high school.
Yeah. So you've got kind of that midlife thing going too, where your kids are getting older and you're a seasoned career woman at this point. What would you say in your industry? Like, what are some of the unique stressors that people in midlife are facing?
Yeah, and I agree with you. I'm right in the middle of it myself. And so I can very much relate to the people who are in that stage of life. I honestly think the number one stressor is just uncertainty, because we've spent many years accumulating and building and building our careers, trying to build our bank accounts, trying to save, but not really knowing, have I saved enough? How much is enough? What am I saving for? And so at this stage of life, you've built some things most likely, but you don't know if it's enough. You don't know what the right number is. You don't know what's coming down the road in the next 5, 10, 20 years. And so that's hard to plan for. And so uncertainty can really cause stress.
So,
go ahead.
How do you advise people as they walk in and they have all of these questions of, I don't know, do we have enough? And I think that's a very good question of what is enough.
Right.
And
Right.
how do you direct people, and what are you looking at when you help them determine where they are?
Yeah, so there's no cookie cutter answer, and that's also what makes it a little more challenging. And so it really is important you start with the goals, really getting to know what your goals are, because your goals might be different from your neighbor or your friend. And so really identifying, not just a big picture out there goal, but let's get more specific. What is the number that you have in mind for that goal, or what is the age that you have in mind for that goal? Beginning to identify those things, and then we can begin to build some plans to help you reach your goals. But we have to really understand what the goals are, and they're different for everybody. So that's always where I start. And then building a financial plan. That you'll hear me say that a lot, and that's because it really is probably the most valuable tool, where you can, first of all, gather together everything that you currently have, your current situation, your current cash flow. You can then lay on top of that what your goals are for the future, and then we can build a roadmap to get you from where you are today to where you want to be. And that might require some changes. It might mean that you're on track, and that just knowing that and just having that that certainty that we're doing the right things and we're heading in the right direction can just take a tremendous amount of stress off. Part of a financial plan, and the hardest part, is cash flow. And so that's also an area where I really encourage people to know where their money's going, whether you have very little income, whether you have very high income. I feel like it's important for everybody to know, what is my cash flow? What is my cost of living? Where is my money going? And it's not, you notice I haven't said the word budget. It's not, I don't call it a budget, because everybody's budget might be different. Your priorities and how you spend your money might be different from mine. But we both need to know, how much are we spending? Do we have any margin? Do we have any leftover to put towards future goals? Are we spending more than we make in income? Are we spending less? I mean, these are really important questions. So that's definitely a starting point for any financial plan.
What are your favorite ways to track that? Like, do you have certain apps you prefer, websites, or paper?
So I've seen it all ways. I personally have some favorite apps. I've been using mint.com for years myself. It's a free app. It's not perfect. It doesn't allow you a whole lot of flexibility with creating reports, and it's going to be pretty high level. But I can tell you at any moment of any day where we are for this month and how much we've spent. And if I want to have 20 different budget categories, I can, or I can just have 4 or 5. I do tell people to keep it simple. If you make it too complex, you're not going to keep up with it. And so keep it simple, have a couple of different categories that are helpful for you to track. But the main thing is to know what's coming in, what's going out, what's left over every month. So there are others. There's others, like Quicken is one that everybody's heard of. It's a bit more complex. It also, there's a fee for that. There's some online software programs that I may not have personal experience with, but I know they're out there. Lots of them. And then I also have clients who just keep a good old-fashioned Excel spreadsheet, so that works too. But in my opinion, it is a little more work, and it might be harder to keep up with over time.
Do you connect your accounts to Mint? Is that something you can do? And like if you buy something on Amazon, do you just enter it manually or do you have it all connected?
No, that's the beauty of it. It's all connected. And again, keep it simple. So I don't connect, every single account out there. I really just focus on my cash flow account. So my bank account, a couple of credit cards, wherever it is I'm spending most of my money or most of the transactions are happening. Those are the ones I connect. And every day when you log in, it downloads the latest transactions and it actually learns over time how you're categorizing those things. And so it really doesn't require much work every day. Occasionally I'll have to change a category because it guessed wrong. But for the most part, those get downloaded, get categorized, and I can log in at any time and kind of see where my cash flow is for the month.
So it sounds like you're not just doing that to get a picture as you're approaching the plan. You're doing this continually.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's something that I enjoy doing. So I get that. I don't pretend that everyone else enjoys that. But I still find it very important. And so even if it's not something that you enjoy doing with your free time, to carve off literally no more than 10 minutes a day or 20 minutes a week, just to download some transactions, make sure it's categorized, and just know what's coming in, what's going out, and what's left over. And that's really the key. And I say that again, regardless of income level, because for people who maybe have high income, you still need to know what is your amount that you can and should be saving, because you're not going to have high income forever. And so let's capture that margin, the amount that's left over every month, let's capture it into some savings so that you can reach your long-term goals faster. So no matter what the level of income. So again, it's not necessarily about budgeting or, how do I stretch my money to make it last every month? It's truly about information and knowing, and also what is our cost of living. So that is a key component when we start looking at retirement planning as well, because everyone's idea of retirement is different. And so I really need to understand for my clients, what does retirement look like for you? What is your lifestyle? What is your cost of living? Because if that's what we want to maintain in the future, we need to know what that level is. We need to know, are you going to be looking at doing some traveling and maybe even spending more in the first few years of retirement than you do now? And those are important things to know ahead of time.
I would think that this would really just getting that picture, having something tangible to do. Money is a panic button. I mean, it just is. I mean, people panic, and it's like, even if you don't panic all the time, there are certain times of the year that we panic, like tax season, Christmas, right? We got the predictable panic buttons.
Right.
And so I would imagine that just helps with that whole cycle of panic. But something like Christmas, how do you recommend that people do some planning around that?
So if we get a handle on the cash flow and we know what that looks like for you, so we know it's coming, it's not a surprise, even though it sneaks up on us financially, we can plan ahead. And so we can begin to build up a savings account for Christmas, or even after Christmas. I mean, most people will put purchases on a credit card, just maybe even to get the points, but hopefully it's not more than can be paid off right away and the very next month after Christmas. So just planning ahead for that and knowing it's coming and building that into our monthly cash flow throughout the year.
That's great. And I mean, people in midlife, they've got a couple of things going on. And you even mentioned it at the beginning, older kids are way more expensive than younger kids who are buying Elmo. Right. I mean, way more expensive.
Right.
And then you've got aging parents who may have unique financial stressors, and children often are either helping or trying to figure that out. So how do we adjust according to this stage in life that has greater financial demand?
Right. Yeah, going back to your original question, what are some of the unique things about midlife? And this is probably the most expensive period of your life. Hopefully you have some years behind you, building your career and maybe your income, but that's not always necessarily true. There's career changers, there's people, starting over. So income is certainly not at its highest point in midlife, but your expenses probably are. Kids are expensive, as we know. You're still paying off your mortgage at this age, most likely. You do have, some other expenses that creep up. I mean, this is when, the house is possibly being, repaired, renovated. Hot water heaters tend to blow up in our midlife for some reason. It is the most expensive time period. It's also the time period where you're trying to, build your accounts, your savings. You're having to balance your time, and that's also a cost. And so kids are also really busy and probably have activities that you want to be part of, but you also feel the need to be at work or be focusing on the career so that you can build the income. So you also have to make some decisions about how you're going to spend your time. I do sometimes see at this stage of life, people get what I call retirement heavy, because we've heard our whole life that we have to, from the time we get our first job, we have to start saving for retirement, which is important. I don't disagree with that. But that can often be such a focus that here we are in midlife, and we have some other expenses that come up that are what I call short-term expenses that we haven't planned for well enough because we've been so focused on retirement. So, we look up and we see all of our savings are sitting in retirement accounts that we can't touch, but we have some expenses now that we need to take care of. So you really have to balance the saving for those along the way as well. But I do say to anyone who's really struggling with, there's so many places I could spend my money. Where do I focus? Where do I prioritize? And this sounds selfish, so don't hear me wrong. But I tell people that you really have to focus on yourself first, because you don't want to become a burden on your own children. And so there are some things like, for instance, a 4-year college education is a wonderful thing to plan for and can absolutely be done, but it's not a right. And so if you're not in a position to spend a lot of money on a college education for your children, and you haven't saved enough for your own future, you really need to focus on your own future first, because there's other options for the kids and for college, but you've got to get yourself in a financially healthy place. And that's the same is true for aging parents. We certainly want to help. We often feel an obligation to help. And we absolutely can help with our time, with our caregiving, with our attention, but it doesn't mean we have to help financially. There are other programs in place. If they haven't saved enough for themselves and they're struggling financially, you just have to be really careful not to get your own self into a financial mess in order to provide financially for aging parents.
That all feels really heavy, and like those stress points are real, and conversations maybe need to be had.
Yeah.
It seems like this is a place where a lot of hard conversations could be avoided, not because that's a good thing to avoid them, but just because people avoid them. They're hard.
Yeah.
And yet having them, whether it's with your own kids or whether it's with your parents or your siblings around costs for your parents, they need to be had, is what I'm hearing from you, because it gets to that picture of painting what is. This is our financial situation. This is what we can do. And maybe instead of focusing on what you can't do, saying this is what we can do.
Right.
And maybe a family may have more time to contribute than money, and a
Right.
sibling that is far away may have more money than time to contribute, and
Exactly.
having those conversations.
Yeah.
You mentioned retirement, and
Yes.
that is a question. I think that a lot of us, if we just hear the word and our heart rate starts going up, because probably it is that uncertainty. I don't know where I stand, or I don't know what I should be even preparing for. How do you help people when they walk into your office and they are in panic mode around retirement?
Well, I'll go back to what I said earlier. We build a financial plan.
Yeah.
We first of all have to know what does retirement mean for you, not for your neighbor, not for your friend, not for your own parents. So we have to understand, what are we aiming for? And that's an age as well as a lifestyle and a dollar figure. There was an advertisement on TV several years ago, if anybody remembers it, where they said, "What's your number?" And that was kind of the tagline of the ad. And it was a good question. What's your number? Your number might be very different from someone else's. And the age is also a big question mark. This is something I tend to have a lot of energy around, because I did a deep dive at one point in my career into Social Security to really understand, where did this idea of retirement come from, and especially the right to retire at 65 and no later. And that really came from Social Security. When that was enacted back in the 30s, that was the number that was chosen. And ever since then, that became, if I have to work past 65, then, there's something wrong. And that is just simply not true. The thing that was also not factored into Social Security was longevity. At the time when 65 was chosen as the age of retirement, I believe an average male life expectancy was 68. That has changed significantly over time. And so now we're in our 80s for an average life expectancy. But if you still have your heart set on that age 65 retirement, you can see quickly that now we're looking at a 25-year minimum runway where we have to provide for our own income. And that is a very different picture than it was, when Social Security became a thing. And so the first thing I do is encourage my clients to really think carefully about, what does retirement mean? What is the point of it? If you're still active and healthy and productive and fulfilled, there's no reason that you have to necessarily retire. If those things aren't true, then let's talk through, what could we do differently? Maybe not necessarily use the word retirement. I like to use the word financial independence. At what age can we help you reach financial independence so that you're going to be okay if for some reason you couldn't work or bring in income, but that you're still, thinking through, what was I created to do? Where am I providing, purpose and contributing to the world? And where do I want to continue doing that, whether it be for income or not? So really thinking through retirement. It is a big word. It's a big concept. And it's a really important thing to talk about. And especially between spouses, we have to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we're all heading towards the same goal. So once we get some of that nailed down and we understand, pretty close picture of what your lifestyle is and how much we need to prepare for, we can back into, what's your number? What's the number that, with conservative assumptions is going to be enough? And that can provide a lot of peace of mind for people to just know, whether they're on track or not. I mean, honestly, even if you're not on track, just knowing, okay, I have information and now I can make some changes in order to get back on track, that in itself provides a huge level of peace of mind versus, just the unknown, not knowing if I'm even close.
And this is not just to go pump up, Kate right now, but I mean, I really mean it when I say having a third party like a financial planner helping in this. I can't tell you the amount of conflict it reduces between a husband and wife or, just couples, because it really kind of takes the emotion out and it helps to have an expert who's looking at your information and telling you about your information factually with the emotion not tied to it. And that is so helpful. And it's become a value for my husband and I to even like have our kids. We've had them meet with our financial planners because they're older now. Our kids are getting older and we just want them to be familiar with, here's what a financial planner does. Here's how they help you. So we've kind of invited them into that process because it is so helpful. It's been so helpful for us. Yeah. And it really does matter to have that third party looking at your information in a different way.
It's true. And one of the number one marriage stressors is finances and money. And there is a lot of emotion tied up in those conversations, and there can be judgment there, and especially if the two spouses are not on the same page. And so having somebody who can provide some objective, hopefully wise advice and guidance and things to do and things to work on and things to look at, or even just encouragement that you guys are doing a great job and that you don't have to worry about it. Now go home and focus on your marriage and your kids and don't worry about the money. Those things can be life-changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So give us your top 3 things. If you were in your top 3 things for people in their 40s and 50s to be doing, what are they?
Well, I would start by saying, find a good financial advisor and do a financial plan, even if it's one time. I mean, we work with clients in multiple different ways, and most of our clients, we would say, is an ongoing relationship because, honestly, a financial plan is outdated the very next day. But at least it's a starting point. You have something to look at and say, here's where we are today. We are on track. And then maybe we need to get a checkup every few years. So that's another way to do it. But if you can, afford to work with somebody ongoing, it can just be a regular annual, let's sit down and see where we are, see if we need to make any changes, make any adjustments. So I think that is probably, the number one recommendation. Secondly, and I've said it already, but to know your cost of living, know where your money's going. Just knowing how much is coming in, how much is going out, and what's left over. And so even if you don't do, the full financial planning right away, at a minimum, just being able to, with confidence, know what your cash flow looks like is really key. And then I would say, really looking at the big picture, not getting, too laser focused on any one thing or one area, but looking at the big picture, whether it be retirement, kids, college education, maybe it's saving for or wanting to potentially have a vacation home one day, or whatever those things might be. Sometimes you have to be working towards all of the goals simultaneously. And so really, maintaining a big picture view and seeing it all at once and all together. And then I know you only asked for 3, but I'm gonna give a 4th one.
Okay, give us 4. Give us a bonus tip. This is the bonus tip.
The bonus is, in my opinion, to live a generous lifestyle. And so this kind of plays into all of those areas. And it can be generous with your time, generous with, with your wisdom, generous in many ways, but to live a generous lifestyle. And what that does, and, especially on the financial side, if you can be financially generous, even if it's a few dollars a month, whatever it is, it helps us to hold what we have with an open hand. Yeah. It continues to change our focus off of me and my money and my finances and there's not enough, or I don't know how much is enough. And it really shifts that focus to, outside of myself, and helps me to kind of let go of some of that pressure of finances.
It's such a good word.
It really does reframe the definition of enough, because then you realize, I do have enough.
Right.
And I can make adjustments. I can make adjustments in my lifestyle in order to be generous in this way. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Kate. This has been so wonderful. And people can work with you all over the country. You don't have to be in Denver to do so. So if people want to contact you, where do they find you?
Well, so meritfinancialadvisors.com is the website. We as a firm have offices all over the country as well. Mine happens to be in Greenwood Village. We have another one in downtown Denver, and then one in Colorado Springs here locally. But you can search on the website for the location, and Greenwood Village is where I am. LinkedIn, that's always a great way to find people. If you're on LinkedIn, you can just search for me and send me a message, and I'd be happy to connect. Obviously email is always an easy way, and that's just kredden@meritfa.com.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Kate. This has been wonderful. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
Okay,
Thanks.
bye.
Bye-bye.